At Niwaki, we're getting really into sharpening our knives. We've got a great set of Shapton glass stones that we use. But what's interesting about these stones is that they're good for kitchen knives. They're also good for woodworking tools and well, all sharp edges really. You know, you might wonder, why not just go down to the supermarket and buy a cheap stainless steel knife? Years later, it will be useless. It's next to useless when you buy it. The stainless steel keeps no edge at all. Whereas these knives are nearly always carbon steel, and you can sharpen them up and you can keep them sharp. And if you do damage them, you can grind the edge back down to a new line and sharpen them again from there. I've got my favourite knife with me, which is a carbon Niwaki, so it's a square-ended multi-purpose vegetable knife, double beveled. And I've got a range of different whetstones from Shapton. Their glass series has this very thin little strip of ceramic laminated to a glass background. And there's a very simple process. You work your way through the grit, starting with a rougher grit. So a rougher grit, like a 500, would have a smaller number on it. And then you work up through higher grits, smoother grits, as your blade gets better and better. First thing to do whenever you start sharpening is check that the stone itself is flat, because if you've got a dipped stone, it's not going to work on a straight blade. So there's a very simple way of doing that. You draw some pencil marks on there, a little bit of water on there as well, and you get a diamond lapping plate. This is a Shapton diamond lapping plate, and you just run it across there, and you want to remove all of this pencil work so that you know you've got a flat stone. So this is a 500, and first of all what we're going to do is check for any nicks and chips in the blade, and if you run it through a piece of paper you can feel a little resistance just there and just there. So this is a 500 grit, and we want to slowly work our way through. And I'm doing about a third or half of the blade at a time. I'm not trying to do the whole thing in one go. I've got my fingers down for pressure on the blade where I'm doing it. And I give it about that much, and then I move to the middle portion of the blade. And the pressure is in my left hand. Those three fingers are what are putting the pressure on. My right hand is just doing its best to hold the knife in the same position the whole time. And then do the same on the other side, which means turning the knife over, trying to keep the angle the same that you're working on the other side of the blade as well. And I'm not counting, but I suppose I give it 10 or maybe 15 goes backwards and forwards. And you should be able to see if there's anything that bad on it, but that's definitely an improvement on that. Once you're done with that one, you work up to the next grit. And I like to go typically from a 500 up to a 2000 grit is my sort of preferred way to go. Lots of water just to swill off any sort of grit or anything it's got on the stone. This is the pond, the Shapton pond that we sell that keeps all your splashes. So if you're working on a kitchen table or something, it's quite useful. I love this knife. It's three-layered, triple-layered, which most Japanese knives are. The central cutting layer, which is the hagane, it's made of white paper steel, which is it's not always considered the best steel. A lot of people prefer blue paper steel, but white steel is great because it sharpens out really quickly. Blue steel, if you like the blue steel, is harder to sharpen, but holds its edge longer once you've sharpened it. To be honest with you, if it's just a general purpose kitchen knife, it doesn't matter a great deal. Unless you're a very serious chef, it doesn't really matter which knife you're using. It's just looking after it well is the key. There we go. And you can have fun with a bit of paper just to see if it feels any better. And that, there's no nick or chip anymore. It goes straight through that little resistance and it cuts like a knife through butter. So for regular kitchen sharpening, if you're not obsessed about this sort of stuff, 2000 is really quite a good place to stop, 1500 or 2000. I like to go up to 4000 for these knives just because you feel the difference. The difference doesn't stay on the blade for too long. You lose that little extra edge fairly quickly, but you get a lovely sort of honed finish from going up to 4000. And they're beautiful things, these knives, and keeping them sharp just makes them more beautiful.